On May 2, 2012, Eastman Kodak sold its entire online photo business. The price was $23.8 million. 3 weeks earlier, Facebook had announced it was buying Instagram, a photo app with 13 employees and zero revenue, for $1 billion. Kodak had 132 years of history. At its peak, 140,000 employees. It controlled 90% of the American film market. And it had invented the digital camera in 1975 in its own lab with its own engineer, 17 years before anyone else shipped one. Here's what every version of this story gets wrong. Kodak did not bury the digital camera. Kodak patented it. Kodak sold it. In 2005, Kodak was the #1 digital camera brand in the United States. They saw it coming. They built the thing. They won the market. And they went bankrupt anyway. The reason isn't in a conference room in 1975. It's on a balance sheet and inside a 120-acre chemical plant that physically could not be turned off. This is file number 1. To understand why Kodak died, you first have to understand how obscenely well it worked. Kodak did not sell cameras. That's the first thing to get straight. Cameras were the delivery mechanism. In its best years, roughly 80% of Kodak's profit came from film, and only about 4% from selling cameras. The cameras were nearly given away. The film was the business. And film was one of the great margin machines in industrial history. At its peak, photographic film carried gross margins in the neighborhood of 70%. 70. For comparison, a very good consumer electronics business runs at 20. A supermarket runs at 3. But it got better than that, because film wasn't a one-time sale. Every roll a customer shot came back for developing. Developing meant chemicals, Kodak chemicals. It meant paper, Kodak paper. It meant a print, and prints meant reorders. One camera, a lifetime of consumables. Razor and blades, except the blades were chemistry, and Kodak owned the chemistry. By 1976, Kodak held 90% of film sales in the United States and 85% of camera sales. Not a market leader. A market. The absolute summit was 1996. Revenue of roughly $16 billion. A market capitalization somewhere between 28 and 31 billion, depending on which day you counted. The stock above $90. One of the 5 most valuable brands on Earth. Profits actually peaked a bit later, about $2.5 billion in 1999. At the center of it all sat Kodak Park in Rochester, New York. Not a factory, a private city. 120 acres, its own power plant, its own fire department, tens of thousands of workers at its height. Remember Kodak Park. It's the murder weapon, and we'll come back to it. December 1975. A 24-year-old electrical engineer at Kodak named Sassoon finishes a device roughly the size of a toaster. It weighs 8 pounds. It runs on 16 AA batteries. The lens was scavenged from a used Super 8 movie camera out of a junk bin. The sensor is a Fairchild CCD, 100 pixels by 100 pixels, 0.01 megapixels. He points it at a lab assistant named Joy Marshall. The exposure takes 50 milliseconds. Then he waits 23 seconds while the image crawls onto a cassette tape. Then he carries the tape to a separate playback box the size of a suitcase, waits another 23 seconds, and a black and white image assembles itself on a television. Her hair is a silhouette. Her face is static. She looks at it and says, "You need work." Sassoon takes it to management. And here is the line that launched 10,000 business school lectures. According to Sassoon himself, the executives were convinced that nobody would ever want to look at their photographs on a television set. That's the story. Arrogant suits, buried invention, karmic bankruptcy. Clean, satisfying, shareable. It's also mostly false. Here's what actually happened. Kodak filed a patent on Sassoon's device in 1977. Granted in 1978. United States Patent 4131919. That patent portfolio went on to earn Kodak billions in licensing revenue over the following decades. In 2010 alone, patent licensing brought in $838 million. Sassoon wasn't exiled. He stayed at Kodak, working on digital cameras for another 34 years. And Kodak kept building. In May 1991, 17 years before the iPhone, Kodak shipped a commercial digital camera. A 1.3 megapixel sensor bolted onto a Nikon body, sold to photojournalists for around $20,000. The EasyShare consumer line followed. In 1993, Kodak hired George Fisher away from Motorola with an explicit mandate to make it a digital company. And it worked. By 2005, Kodak held the #1 unit market share in digital cameras in the United States. That same year, for the first time, Kodak's digital revenue exceeded its film revenue. So let's be precise about what Kodak's failure actually was. Kodak did not fail to see the future. It did not fail to invent the future. It did not even fail to sell the future. Kodak failed to make money on it. In 2001, with a solid share of the American digital market, Kodak was losing approximately $60 on every camera it sold. $60 per unit. Every unit. Because a digital camera has no film, no developing, no chemicals, no paper, no reorder. You sell it once at commodity hardware margins against Sony and Canon and Nikon, companies that had been fighting a knife war over consumer electronics margins for 40 years and were extremely good at it. Kodak wasn't fighting for the photography market. It had already won the photography market. It was fighting to replace a 70% margin annuity with a negative margin one-time sale. There was no version of digital where Kodak made as much money as it made on film. Not one. The executives in 1975 weren't wrong that digital was worse. They were wrong about the timeline. Sassoon told them 15 to 20 years, and he was almost exactly right. But being right about the timeline wouldn't have saved them either. Which brings us to the part nobody talks about. I want to step off the balance sheet for a minute. Because there's a physical reality underneath this that finance coverage almost always misses. Photographic film is not a product. It's a process. A film coating line is a continuous chemical process plant. Emulsions are prepared in enormous batches. They're coated onto a moving web of base material at speed, in the dark, in layers a few microns thick, in an environment where humidity, temperature, and particulate contamination are controlled to tolerances that would embarrass a hospital. Then it's slit, packaged, and shipped, all without a single photon reaching it. Here is the thing about a plant like that. It has a minimum efficient scale, and that scale is enormous. You cannot run a film coating line at 30% capacity. The economics don't scale down, they fall off a cliff. Fixed costs don't care about your volume. The power plant runs. The climate control runs. The maintenance crews are on the payroll. The environmental compliance is the same whether you're at full tilt or idling. Anyone who has worked around heavy process plant knows this in their bones. A machine shop can lay off half its people and run half the machines. A process plant can't. It's either on or it's off. The middle is where you bleed to death. So when Kodak's film volume started falling, management wasn't facing a gentle decline. They were facing a step function. Every unit of volume lost made every remaining unit more expensive to produce. And they had built that spiral on a scale almost impossible to imagine. Kodak Park was engineered for the photographic demand of the entire Western world. That asset base, the vertical integration, the chemistry, the private power plant, was the single greatest competitive moat in the industry. Right up until the moment it became a 120-acre concrete anchor. This is the part that turns a story into a lesson. Kodak's executives are usually accused of failing to imagine digital. The more brutal reading is that they imagined it perfectly and understood that their physical plant gave them no survivable path from here to there. Digital didn't just cannibalize a product line. It stranded a chemical empire. Now watch what Fujifilm did with the exact same problem. Fujifilm faced identical disruption on an identical timeline. It was arguably hit harder. Between 2005 and 2010, its color film sales collapsed from 156 billion yen to 33 billion. Its photo finishing business fell by roughly 2/3 in the same window. Fujifilm's president at the time, Shigetaka Komori, later admitted they hadn't accounted for the speed of it. And then he did something Kodak never did. Komori looked at Fujifilm and asked a different question. Not, how do we stay in photography? He asked, what do we actually know how to do? The answer was not pictures. The answer was advanced chemistry, thin film coating at micron tolerances, colloid science, and antioxidant compounds. Those are transferable. Photography isn't. Fujifilm took the same coating expertise and moved it into LCD display films. It took its knowledge of collagen and antioxidants, the chemistry of stopping film from degrading, and launched a cosmetics line. It went into pharmaceuticals, diagnostic imaging, regenerative medicine, contract drug manufacturing. Between 2000 and 2010, Kodak's sales fell by roughly 48%. Fujifilm's grew by 57%. By 2010, imaging was under 16% of Fujifilm's revenue. Kodak's answer to the same question was to try to force digital into an analog business model. It installed thousands of photo kiosks, a physical attempt to recreate the developing counter. In 2001, it bought the photo-sharing site OPhoto, which could plausibly have become Instagram a decade early. Instead, Kodak used it to try to convince people to print their digital photos. They owned a social network and used it as a print advertisement. Every move was the same move. Protect the print, protect the chemistry, protect the plant. Here's the invoice. 1997, 1 year after the peak. Revenue drops from just under $16 billion to $14.4. Net earnings go from $1.29 billion to $5 million. A 99.6% collapse in a single year. Kodak would not post an annual profit after 2004. Not once, ever again. Between 2003 and 2011, 47,000 jobs eliminated, 13 manufacturing plants closed, 130 processing labs shut down. In 2006, Kodak stopped manufacturing its own digital cameras and handed it to a contract manufacturer. That same year, Chief Executive Antonio Perez described the digital camera business as, in his words, a crappy business. He was right. He was also running one. Then the number that ends the argument. In 2011, Kodak's last full year, the film business, the supposed dinosaur, generated $34 million in operating income. The digital camera division, the future, lost $349 million. The dinosaur was profitable. The future was losing $10 for every one the past made. June 2011, $957 million in cash and burning. January 18, 2012, Eastman Kodak and 15 affiliates file for Chapter 11 in the Southern District of New York. Debt, $6.75 billion. That same year, Fujifilm posted record revenue north of $21 billion. March 2012. Kodak agrees to sell Kodak Gallery, the O-photo business, to Shutterfly for $23.8 million. There are no competing bidders, not one. Nobody else wanted it at any price. April 2012. Facebook announces the Instagram deal. $1 billion, 13 employees. May 2nd, 2012. The Kodak Gallery sale closes. Roughly 75% of the proceeds go straight to paying down bankruptcy financing. In 2013, Kodak auctioned off around 1,100 imaging patents, including the lineage of Sasson's 1975 prototype, for about $525 million. It emerged from bankruptcy in September 2013 as a small commercial printing company. The stock, once above $90, had traded as low as 15 cents. So here's what's actually in this file. Kodak's failure was not a failure of vision. They invented it, patented it, shipped it, and led the market. If foresight were enough, Kodak would be a trillion-dollar company. Kodak's failure was that it defined itself by its output instead of its capability. It thought it was in the picture business. Fujifilm figured out it was in the chemistry business. And chemistry could go somewhere else. Pictures couldn't. And underneath that, the thing nobody wants to say out loud. Sometimes there is no answer. Sometimes a 70% margin annuity gets replaced by a negative margin commodity, and the company that owns the annuity is structurally incapable of surviving the swap, no matter who's in the corner office. Kodak's greatest asset, and Kodak's cause of death, were the same 120 acres. The useful question isn't, did they see it coming? Everyone sees it coming. The useful question is, if your best product disappeared tomorrow, what would you still own? Fujifilm had an answer. Kodak had a factory. File number 1 is closed. File number 2 is Nokia. 50% of the global phone market to effectively zero in 6 years. And unlike Kodak, they had a working answer and rejected it. It's on the channel Friday.